A vastly changing regulatory environment, and this seems to be the key theme for last year.
It is. I mean, it came out both at our UK survey, which came released at the same time, and our own trends, where we saw the regulatory environment has been a key challenge for most non-executives, not only in South Africa but globally. And bear in mind, a lot of that relates around remuneration.
Okay, well, tell us a little bit about the remuneration and also how it changes practices in the boardroom.
A lot of it is around the sort of the constant sort of increasing of executive remuneration against maybe failing companies or companies not doing so well. So a lot of it is around regulation, looking at postponement and deferral of bonuses, different types of structures being put into place.
All right, let's take a look at the actual numbers here. Non-executive directors in South Africa decreased from 2,159 to 2,002. That's 7% essentially. So clearly, you know, we are starting to see a drop-off as well, and this is spurred by the challenges that they've been experiencing.
And then I'm not too sure. It could be related that the regulatory environment is forcing non-execs to also either go gardening or farming. But that's the first time we have seen that trend, I have to say.
Yeah.
The question is that a worrying trend?
Well, you know, what do you think it's spurred by? Is it remuneration, as you mentioned? Is it regulation?
In South Africa, I think remuneration or the fees they earn is definitely a contributing factor. And that came out in the UK survey, where for the first time we've actually seen non-execs not saying that it is the biggest challenge, but they're also indicating that this is quite a challenging role, and in fact are being quite optimistic about the role. But if you look at their fees in relation to the time commitment that they spend, that tends to be commensurate.
Well, you mentioned gardening or farming, and we are seeing a bit of a skill shortage in this space, and you're talking about responsibilities becoming slightly stretched as well. Some viewing it as a challenge, which is a good thing for their growth. Yep. Others saying, well, I'm not being remunerated enough.
Exactly, and I think in South Africa that's the fees is a big issue. Also, the other thing is the time commitment. The surveys indicated that at least 4 to 5 extra days per annum, which also means that if we have a look at
so it's to 24 days per annum.
24 hours for the average non-exec, and of course the chairman, if you're a chair of the main board, that's up to 100 days.
Also interesting to know, telecommunications sector, the greatest rise in total number of meetings. No surprise here in South Africa, given all the news out of the telecom sector.
At least it's moved the focus away from the financial service industry, you'll notice, which does tell us that a lot of the financial service industry took the brunt of the regulatory environment. And we're seeing that trend now moving into all other sectors.
Looking at the age, because we're also seeing a drop-off there, and that has been a theme that's actually filtered through over the
Interesting
last
in South
2 years.
Africa. We've been watching that, and now we're saying, look, well, at least I'm now above the median. So you've got executives dropping down to 45 from 48, and chairpersons from 58 to 51. Whereas in the UK, for example, the average chair is still between 60 and 70. The question I'm asking, is this a healthy trend now, or is this a sort of a bottom out? It's now where it should be.
Fee trends, we spoke about a little earlier, the pay gap perhaps also becoming a slightly political issue. We've got the new growth plan underway in South Africa, as you mentioned, a lot of regulatory changes as well. Tell us a little bit about this and how it fares in comparison to what we see in the UK.
I think also the executive pay gap is particularly one of the issues that they're going to have to worry about. It's a big concern. And at the moment, this is not a South African issue only. It may be a bit more politicised in South Africa, but globally this will take some precedence during the coming year, I think. And therefore, apart from the regulatory environment, we're going to see them having to place a lot more emphasis on this pay gap.
Well, chairperson's fees, the median fee for all the JSE companies, declining by 19%.
We've got to qualify that statement, because if you look at certain of the other specific industries, we've seen some healthy increases as well. But that also
financial industry,
particularly in the financial services industry. But we've got to look at that's in line with global trends, where chairpersons have actually taken the lead and said, look, either fees have remained the same or even dropped in certain cases.
And then on the non-executive director space, fees increased by 18%.
Yeah, I think 18%. We've seen that sort of increasing and 18% sort of per annum. From a South African perspective, as I said earlier, where fees is still a contributing factor, I still think we're lagging the sort of global rate.
Well, what are you expecting into 2011? As I mentioned, the new growth plan, which has been tabled by government, and also the fact, I mean, we're looking at wage negotiations going into this year. A lot of concerns about question marks about labour as well.
Exactly. And apart from the normal regulatory environment, whether that be greenhouse or carbon taxes, etc., the whole question around executive pay in the regulatory environment is going to be still, there's still going to be a lot more increasing of this.
And Gerald, are we losing skills to our overseas counterparts?
The numbers seem to show that to me because, as I said, the first time we've seen a decline. We did a further analysis also looking at the number of non-resident non-execs in South Africa, and that's a small number. That's 125 out of the total of 2002. So we'll watch that trend, whether the increasing non-residents, which I very much doubt given our fee levels.
Yeah. Continue?
No, so I think at the moment, I think there is definitely this year there's been a loss of skill.